Mental health is said to include our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act, and it also impacts how we can relate to others, perform day-to-day tasks, handle stress, and also enjoy our favorite activities. Now, in recent years, we've seen an explosion of people dealing with mental health challenges. So we've invited Simone Naidu into studio. She's a metaphysical life coach, and she's here to help us to understand our emotions. Simone, why is there this sort of dramatic increase in mental health challenges that people seem to be dealing with?
Well, Michael, I think it actually harkens back to the pandemic. The crisis that we all faced globally surfaced underlying mental health conditions. So much like we saw this virus move itself through the world, compromising our immune health, people don't understand that our psychology and our emotions, our mind and our feelings, they have an immune system too. And so when we think about mental health, I almost want you to debunk a lot of myths around it and the kind of scariness around it and say, just like you can pick up a cold or a flu, if your immune health is low, your mental health can also be depleted as well.
Absolutely. And then obviously there's mental health, but there are emotions, which are very interlinked. How has this mental health explosion affected the way people are able to now deal with these different emotions and the ups and downs of life?
So I want everyone to remember that you are a thinking, feeling being. When people hear the term mental health, they think, oh, it's just in my mind. Well, the thoughts are linked to the feelings. Before you have a feeling of sadness or anger or guilt or frustration, a thought comes up first. But because it happens in a part of the mind that's automatic, called the subconscious mind, you don't even clock or register that it's even happening to you. So to talk about mental health without speaking about emotions would almost be silly, because it's a depletion of your mental state and it's aggravated by you not feeling okay, to almost put together a generic term.
Right.
But we're going to talk more about the types of emotional stresses that come up that let you know your mental health is probably being compromised at the moment.
Right. And are you finding that this is something that is affecting men and women equally? But I mean, we kind of expect that men are less likely to talk about it, so they probably get affected in a different way down the line, where women are comfortable to express some of these feelings and emotions. What are you seeing in your practice?
Well, there is a massive upsurge in the amount of men coming in for personal development services, which I find incredibly exciting, because for years the narrative has been, women seek help, this is something for women, they want to talk about their problems. But really what we're seeing is the stigma is being debunked around it. What brings a man to seek help is very different to a woman. Usually, because men are so conditioned to have it all figured out, there's the societal norm that when you become a man, you somehow download this rule book of how to solve every single problem. You're the protector, you're the provider, and your own mental and emotional state becomes a sideshow. And because you're still a human being, the effects of stresses in your life, the way your life is structured, they don't go anywhere. Men just deal with it very differently and present very differently. So that's why we always say, check on your strong friends. Well, check on the men in your life. They might always have a solution. They're providing so much safety and security around you, but check how they're feeling. And a lot of the time when men come to see me, they almost have to reach a point where they don't feel like themselves anymore. That is what most of my male clients tell me. They say, I used to be this kind of person, but somehow I just don't feel like myself anymore. And that to me is the most beautiful doorway, because I can start asking them questions that help expand their awareness. Because what I've noticed is that when a man doesn't have a solution for something, that's when he usually registers, I think something's not quite okay with me. So when he can't find a solution to, why am I not happy? Where's all my energy? Why do I not want to hang out with the people I used to? Why am I snapping or more irritable or withdrawing so much from my friends and family and my life? That's usually an indication there's a mental health compromisation.
What are some of the other manifestations of somebody who is just not dealing with their emotions?
Right. So firstly, we see there's a lot more reaction versus response. When we see reactions, the reactions are disproportionate to the event taking place. For example, road rage. And then also we see a lack of emotional regulation, where you find yourself needing hours or even days after a triggering event has happened to regulate yourself back to safety and security. Those are usually some of the key hallmarks of behavioral changes that will let you know your mental health is probably being compromised.
Okay. I mean, is that sort of, to get to that stage, is that due often to a suppression of emotions, or just an inability to manage your emotions as they arise?
So it's both.
Okay.
Sometimes our capacity to manage our emotions is because they're much more intense compared to what they used to be. And because there's so many, they become overwhelming, and then people develop anxiety, right? They are constantly worried, overwhelmed, and they become depleted. Or they are suppressing and repressing emotions. So even if we look at the term depression, which everyone is accustomed to, you could be going through a depressive episode, meaning all these emotions are bubbling up inside of you. Whatever coping mechanism or tools you had, they're not working anymore. And so you're starting to get into a form of denial. They're not here, it will be okay, it will pass, or straight up ignoring it. And when we depress emotions, they've got to go somewhere. And usually they land up in the body, right? Or they land up in, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, and then there's an explosion that happens where you outburst against someone and even you are shocked and surprised. Why am I behaving this way? So it's actually both, Michael.
Yeah. So how do you start to work with people who have hit the stage where they are just no longer able to manage their own emotions?
Firstly, I tell them, let's dissolve all guilt and shame, because you are not equipped. You have not been given the tools to manage yourself in the type of worldly context we now live in. So I think that breaking down that stigma really helps, because if as a man you've been conditioned to have a solution for everything and now you don't, that guilt and shame spiral is the reason why men hide so much.
Feel like a failure.
You feel like a failure, you feel inadequate, I'm not good enough, and there's something wrong with me. And that's why we see when that is left behind, it turns into mental dis-ease or mental illness, and then we start seeing suicide kind of thoughts, suicidation, things like that, right? So when I tell my male clients, I just want you to breathe out and understand nobody taught you any better. The relief I can actually see coming into their energy body is almost like, it's true. When I saw my dad, I don't know how he managed, or I saw him drinking a lot, or fighting with my mom a lot, or things like that, So that helps, number one. That drops it down. The next thing is there's still a sense of skepticism, right? That's what I feel usually is the key into a man's heart or mind, so to speak. If you can prove to him that something works and he can feel better, he buys into it. So I go straight into a practical experience. I say, listen, I can give you the theory behind why your mind and emotions are doing this, or we can do an exercise together and you tell me how you feel. And because I take them into some type of practical exercise, they immediately feel relief and they're like, whoa, that's amazing. So I am carrying all of this stress. We call them stressful emotions. And coming back to your earlier question, they start to see, okay, I have these stressful emotions like anger, like guilt, like fear, and they are sitting in my body. Okay, now I see we have to explore.
Right.
And then we start digging deeper to find out the root causes. Where's this actually coming from? And what you'll realize is that there's specific psychological ages in a man's life where he begins to self-evaluate, where the things he once took for granted he doesn't anymore, where he realizes there's more and deeper to him, that he doesn't just want to be a title or a role. He wants to be seen for who he really is, right? And that I think is so beautiful, because I can teach you any tool to discover who you actually are. I believe sound mental health can be learnt. So we don't tell you there's nothing wrong with you. And I think that's the big thing. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You just lack the skills. And what I've watched also is that the relationships in these men's lives completely start to transform.
I can imagine.
Because the way they see themselves completely changes. They realize, okay, just like I can get a flu, I can also wake up and have low energy or negative thoughts or a lot of anger and frustration. And if I just implement a few lifestyle changes, which is literally the way you treat yourself, the way you think, how you allow yourself to move through your day mentally and emotionally. Those simple changes allow mentorship very quickly. And I think because men really take well to practical advice, like tell me what to do,
Yes.
that's why I think coaching becomes so powerful for them.
Wonderful. Simone, thank you so much for sharing some insights and also just a huge ray of light for some people out there, I have no doubt. So thanks for joining us.
Namaste. Thank you, Michael.